Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. The history of ancient Chinese women's undergarments dates back thousands of years. From loose and comfortable garments to tight and restrictive ones. From simple covering to deeply symbolic cultural representations. The evolution of undergarments has been closely tied not only to the changes in the female body but also to the fashions, aesthetics, and social ideas of each era. In the pre-Qin period, historical records mention undergarments, which were often referred to as xie. The character reveals the ancient Chinese subtle attitude towards undergarments. Xie, as the name suggests, was associated with privacy, emphasizing its personal nature at the time. The primary function of this undergarment was to cover the body's private areas, being simple yet practical. Over the course of several thousand years, undergarments in China evolved in form. Influenced by traditional culture and the aesthetic demands of different historical periods. Presenting a rich variety of styles. One of the most obvious changes has been in the terminology and styles of undergarments. During different dynasties, the names and styles of undergarments reflected the cultural and aesthetic concepts of the time. Through these different names and designs, we can see that undergarments were not merely private clothing but also symbols of the times and society. In the Zhou dynasty, women's undergarments were called xiangfu, a term that continued to be used into the southern and northern dynasties. Underwear during this period was relatively simple, primarily serving the functions of covering and warmth. During the Qin and Han dynasties, the terms for undergarments became more varied. Some referred to them as baofu, others as tsini, and still others as pafu. The styles of undergarments also underwent significant changes, ranging from very simple designs, such as a piece of cloth wrapped around the abdomen, to more complex forms like baofu, which had straps attached to a cloth piece that would be tied around the neck and back. Despite the variety in style and design, the main function of these undergarments remained the same, to cover and conceal the body. By the way, Jin and northern and southern dynasties, the forms and names of undergarments underwent further changes. The undergarments of this period were called liangdang, designed to protect both the front and the back, covering the chest and the back. With advances in textile technology, the materials for undergarments became more diverse, often made from colorful brocades, and began to emphasize decoration and beauty. Starting from the Tang dynasty, the term "hizi" became widely used for women's undergarments. This era, influenced by Confucian ideals, saw the challenge of traditional clothing restrictions, and women's garments began to reveal more of the body. Their undergarments became more exposed, resembling the styles we see today. Especially strapless designs, these can be likened to modern bandeau bras. The fashion of the Tang dynasty was distinctive, and the qi xiongruchuan became popular. This style involved tightly binding a top garment around the chest, then tying a wide belt under the chest. As a result, the shoulders, back, and even part of the arms were exposed, with a sheer, delicate gauze worn over it. The undergarment, though subtle, was alluring and enigmatic, creating a mysterious charm. In the Song dynasty, despite the widespread influence of Confucianism, women's undergarment culture did not fade but instead took on a new form. Underwear during this time was called maxiong, a name that is still used today but with significant differences from modern designs. Maxiong was usually tighter and longer, designed to cover the chest while slightly concealing the abdomen. It was fastened with buttons or straps. Simple but fitting the aesthetic of Central Plains culture. For example, in the classic novel Jin Ping Mei, there is a passage that reads, "Shimen Qing helped the woman to the room, removed her upper and lower garments, and put on a thin short robe. The woman was only wearing a red gauze maxiong." This brief description creates an atmosphere of subtle allure. The Song dynasty's maxiong was different from the earlier hizi. as it was more form-fitting and slender. Lacking the roughness of foreign influences and more in line with the gentle beauty of Central Plains culture. During this period, some non-mainstream undergarment styles might have existed as well. For instance, in her poem Kai Sangzi, Li Qingzhao described a woman on a summer night, after a rain, changing into a thin red garment. The skin through the sheer fabric seemed to shimmer with a delicate and enticing beauty. This jiangshao could refer to a red translucent undergarment, creating an impression of freshness and allure. During the Ming dynasty, the maxiong evolved into a waist garment, with women focusing more on body curves. The waist was tightly cinched, leaving the shoulders and chest exposed. This period saw a fascination with bright red colors, as people believed that only big red can be considered luxurious. The dazzling colors mirrored the extravagant and ostentatious societal trends of the Ming dynasty. By the Qing dynasty, undergarments took on a diamond-shaped form, becoming symbolic vessels for spiritual meaning. Meanwhile, Western undergarment culture began to infiltrate, and shaping and body sculpting became important functions for women. The Qing by Lei Chao records, maxiong, a small garment for the chest, also called mo fu or mo du, is made from a square piece of cloth, tightly binding the chest to protect from the wind and cold. It is commonly called a daodu. Both men and women wore this. The diamond-shaped undergarment was carefully crafted, with straps attached to both corners, crossed at the back and tied at the neck. Compared to previous dynasties, the craftsmanship and materials of this undergarment were more refined. It is worth mentioning that many people mistakenly believe that the underwear of the Tang dynasty was worn on the outside. But this is actually a misconception. In the Tang dynasty, underwear was more about covering and embellishing the body, whereas the trend of wearing underwear on the outside actually began during the Ming dynasty. At that time, the main waistbands of Ming women were exquisitely made and brightly colored. Some wealthy women or those in entertainment venues would expose them, making it a fashion trend. This phenomenon was not limited to China. In Europe, there was a similar trend where wealthy socialites and high-end courtesans would wear their underwear on the outside, both to showcase their bodies and as a form of ostentation. This was a popular fashion trend at the time. Additionally, in ancient China, a daughter's wedding underwear was often a precious item kept at the bottom of the chest, sometimes accompanied by practice diagrams. This was because marriages in ancient China were often blind marriages, with women rarely having the opportunity to meet their husbands before the wedding, let alone have any intimate contact. On the wedding night, the underwear and these practice diagrams would come into use, symbolizing the entry into marriage. Especially during the Qing dynasty, underwear was not only used for covering the body and shaping, but also carried more cultural and symbolic meanings. For example, the patterns on the dudu, a type of traditional Chinese undergarment, represented not just aesthetics but ideals, blessings, and well-wishes. Each dudu was almost a work of art. These patterns had rich meanings. For instance, the phoenix seeking the phoenix pattern, often seen on the dudu of women from brothels, was usually in bright red, symbolizing nobility and the ideal of love. Another pattern, Wanfu frog, frog of 10,000 blessings, played on the homophone between frog and baby, conveying women's beautiful wishes for fertility and reproduction. Women wearing this type of dudu were typically newlyweds, and they would often feel shy or embarrassed when seeing such patterns. Interestingly, the dudu was not exclusive to women, men also wore it. For example, in Dream of the Red Chamber, Jia Baoyu is depicted as wearing a dudu while sleeping. In chapter 36 of the novel, when Shui Baochai enters Jia Baoyu's bedroom alone, she sees Shiren embroidering a dudu for Jia Baoyu, with a pattern of mandarin ducks playing in the water. Such patterns would also often cause women to blush in those times. There is another lesser-known secret about underwear, many people would hide herbs like ginger and cinnamon in their underwear, as these materials could alleviate stomach pain and coldness. Some women, in order to achieve a fragrance effect or for other purposes, would secretly place musk shavings or other spices in the layers of their underwear, which not only helped with health but also added a mysterious aura. According to some related professionals, although clothing cannot speak and is not a direct tool for conveying words, it contains thousands of years of Chinese history and culture. In each dynasty, clothing not only reflected the values and aesthetics of the time but also showcased advances in textile technology, especially with intimate items like underwear. They underwent many changes in the hands of women in different dynasties. This is because, compared to outer garments, underwear was subject to fewer restrictions by rites and etiquette, allowing women to pursue individuality and creativity more freely. It is this freedom that allows us to see such a rich and colorful historical picture today. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.